Okay, so we're getting ready to fire this up. My ECU is actually hooked up. I'm going to fire this up off of a backup power source that's fully charged. I'm going to turn my ECU off because it doesn't need to be on. If you run your power this way, if you know what a VPX system is, it's going to fire up as well, which is the aircraft's electrical system, but it's not configured. And so we've already tested everything with a voltmeter. All the grounds are good. Here's what's important though. If you ever find yourself installing a Garmin system that has anything to do with a CAN bus network, especially with the G3X, is the PFD will push all updates. So a lot of people are, they just don't understand how a lot of the new electronic stuff works, and it is a lot more reliable. They understand that than the old like steam gauges and vacuum reference systems. They don't necessarily know the nuts and bolts of how. Part of how it is that, and this is extremely important, and it is not emphasized in most installation manuals enough. Do not fire this thing up if you are not ready, willing, and able to keep it on as long as it needs. That could be, it could be up to an hour, but I would say you need to be at least prepared for it to be on for 30 minutes till you run through system I show what. Because what happens is, this is a CAN network, and the advantage is everybody can see everybody can talk to everybody. It's kind of like an internet or an old party line, really. The electronics in this thing, in order for them to be incorruptible, this is the best way you can think of it anyways. First time they power it up, they are looking to receive their instructions and an update, like what I am, what my job is, and how I'm going to do it. And they receive that off of this first time powered up. And then you can think of it as a door is going to shut, and they're not going to listen to anything else. It's kind of like, they get the gospel and that's it. Finit, fini, fine, the end, no more. And so if you cut them off, like you're like, oh, cool, wow, that's so neat. And then you snap it off and they are receiving an update. They're like, well, I guess that's it. And so what'll happen is a lot of times you really have to actually send the unit back to Garmin. They'll have to go in and replace whatever part of it or that module or whatever it is and send it back to you, because it's built that way for a reason. A lot of people are like, what? Especially if this bites them in the butt and they're like, that's so stupid. Well, it's not stupid. In fact, it's really smart. The reason is they can't get some bad data because they're just not going to listen to anything else other than what they received the first time, and that's it. And when you get a new update, if you go to update anything, it will put it in kind of like an update mode, and your PFD will push that to everything else on the CAN network. And at that point, once it gets its instructions, hey, we're getting a new update, it kind of does what it does on the first time boot up. Okay, we'll take an update. This is verified. But something is given. You can think of it as this. Something is going to be given to these in this first time power up that is going to allow them to receive future updates. So they'll listen to the right ones, won't listen to anything that's corrupted. If anything inside them, like the PFD, gets corrupted, it resorts to its configuration module that's installed in that back shell. And so this first time power up is really important to not screw up and at all. And so you make sure that you're not going to run out of juice before everybody is updated. Fortunately, there's a way to see if everybody is. So anyways, here we go. Yep, got that. Whoop, there's the G3Xs. And then our autopilot servos, they're going to stay off. And so a really good tactic or strategy is to leave some things unhooked or a way for no power to go to them. And then as things are updating, because a lot of times that can overload, well, it doesn't overload the network, but it's just like loading files onto the internet. You can do each one of them at a time, and that sometimes is a little bit faster, or you can just do everybody all at once and they eventually all get their updates. So if you leave, like I'm going to leave the autopilot servos off, the GMA 245 is removed, it's not going to get its. And those are pretty much the big ones. The autopilot servos, I think they have a lower processing speed, so they tend to take a while. So they're offline. So what we've got now is basically everything on the CAN network except the autopilot servos and the audio panel. Of course, the navigators and radios, they're not on the CAN network, they're all serial. In this case, they are, because we're using 16 megawatt radios. And so, yeah, so here we go. What you'll do to check this out is we'll put it in config mode. Probably should have just held I wanted to see the screens come up though. So no way of telling if everything's looking good. So the CAN network is now going to identify everything that's on it. And it's really, you know, I say a network, it's CAN bus. So there's PFD, green check mark. You've got your, and basically what you're looking for is the software, system software. And if that does not say updating, you're good. We've got a 0% network error rate. ADHARS 1, it's X'd out, and that's just because it has no outside air temp and it is not calibrated, so that's good, 0% X work. Yeah, we've got MAG 1, so that's most important. It's online. 0% network error rate. System software, it is not updating. ADHARS 2 is not calibrated, but its system software is up to date. GEA24, that's your engine monitor. See, it's already recognizing its serial backup, because that's automatically configured, so it's showing that you got a good serial connection to backup. And ADHARS 1 is also showing it's got a good serial connection backup into serial 1. So it can see here that it's got, you know, roll and pitch trim. It can see that it's got a roll servo and a pitch servo. Those are your autopilots. The CAN bus can see them, but they have no power, so it can tell they're there, but there's nothing there. That's your autopilot control. It's up to date, so that's all good. Audio panel has been removed so that we don't have to worry. So this actually went really fast. Sometimes it takes about 15 minutes, and it really just depends. If you have 1 or 2 things in there, here's our VPX. If you have 1 or 2 things in there that's really just on a different system software, it can sit there and update for 10 or 15 minutes while this pushes its current level. And this is not the update, but a lot of times they'll read through the instructions and they're written very well. Everything in there is pretty dead-gum important. It's just one of those things, they don't realize how important it is. You fire this thing up, you know, I just went through and checked everything. Everything is through updating. We're good to go. You could power this down now. Usually it is not nearly that fast, but I've learned, so I've kept some stuff offline. Next time this thing comes up, when these things are online, and you can turn them on after you fire this up, like I could turn that one on now and then turn that one on now, and you'll see them begin updating. Once everything checks out and everybody's on the same page, so to speak, you'll go through and do a last system update, and it's the exact same thing. They're going to kind of receive their gospel, and you don't cut it off, because whatever they get, they're just going to be like, okay, that's it. And you can think of it, they're just going to shut the door, and any other information that comes like, hey, this is what you are, and this is how you need to do it. It's going to be like, nope, 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 nope. Already got my instructions. That's it. That's basically the best way to think about it. And so don't snap that sucker off. And a lot of times people have, and sometimes the update hadn't initiated yet. I mean, once it had, you're screwed if you do that. Or sometimes, you know, they didn't realize that's what they did. You know, they were just playing around and they accidentally got some power to something, and their network was terminated on both ends, and it was working, or your CAN bus. And so that's actually not all that flashy and probably a little bit boring, but that is really important if you ever find yourself installing anything on a CAN network with Garmin. That's why their products are so rough and tough on, you know, incorruptibility, but that's the downside to it, if you want to think of it that way, is the fact that you got to get that information across, and you got to get it right. Otherwise, you're going to be sending whatever LRU that is back to Garmin. So now we're good to go, and we can see our electrical system, 0.7 amps. So it needs to be configured, but